In this video I'll show you how you can recreate this render in Blender. If you're interested in the 3D file, you can find it on exerpage.com. I'll leave the link down below in the description. Delete the default cube. After, press Shift A and add a cylinder. I've used 100 for the vertices. After, scale it on the Z-axis. Now click on Object and on Apply Scale. After that, go to Modifiers and add a bevel modifier. Use at least 10 segments. After that, press right click and Shadow to Smooth. Go on Render Engine and select Cycles and GPU Compute. After that, switch to Color to Sky Texture. For my render, I've decreased the air and the ozone to 0 and I've used dust to 10. For the strength, I've used 0.1. After that, rotate the cylinder, press R, Y and 90. And for the sun rotation, I've used minus 5.9. After that, I've added a normal plane and I've moved it on the Y-axis. After, I press RX and 90 and I've scaled it. The material of this plane is really simple, so basically I went to shader editor. I've pressed on new and I've added a translucent BSDF. The material that you've seen in the render is created with 3 different materials and a volumetric part. So now I'll show you the first material that I've used, and after I'll show you how you can mix it with the other two. So I've used a glass node. Press Shift D in order to duplicate it 2 times. The first color is red to 1 and green at blue at 0.15. The second one has red at 0.15, green at 1 and blue to 0.15. And obviously the third one has the first 2 values at 0.15. After, I've used 2 add shader nodes. The last step for the first material is the IR. For the red at 2, for the green at 3 and for the blue at 4. The second material is created with a principal BSDF and is the grey part that you see in the render. I've created that material with 2 different Vurne textures. The first Vurne texture is a distance to edge and the second one is F1 with Minkowski. Press Ctrl T on both the textures. Now add 2 different color ramps. For the value of the white indicator, I've used 0.12. So after that, increase the scale. In the render, I've used 92. And I've also used for the Z-axis 7.3. For this other Vurne texture, I've used the same exact scale, so 92. And obviously the same scale, so 7.3. I've used also here the color ramp, but this time I've set the same value and I've also moved the indicator a little bit closer. After that, I've added a mix color node. I've changed the factor and I've used 0.21. After that, I've added the last color ramp and I've set the black indicator to something like 0.02 and the white to 0.08. Actually, the white indicator has the value at 0.7. The last change that I've made is the roughness, that is at 1. The last material is the kind of green shade that I've made. So it is made out of 2 principal BSDF. For the first one I've used this color and for the second one I've used this other color. In order to mix these 2 principal BSDF, I've used a gradient texture. a color ramp and a mapping with a texture coordinate. In order to rotate the gradient texture, on rotation for the y-axis use 90, and after move up the black indicator and the white indicator. I've added a mix color node and a noise texture with a color ramp. For the noise texture I've used scale to 3, details to 15 and roughness to 1. Same for the distortion. Connect the color and move the indicators of the color ramp. I've used also here a value that is like 7.3. Now if you play with this indicator here, you can have the shader where you want. Use a mix shader node, this one, connect the color to the factor and these two different colors here. To mix these three materials I've used the same factor and that is created in this way. So add a texture coordinate node. After this one add a mix color. For the first part of the factor I've used basically the same 4 textures, and now add a mapping node with another texture coordinate. I've used generated for the A value, and here I've added a Vorne texture. Vector to vector and distance to B. I've used smooth F1 and the scale to something like 2.6. After this mix color, use a mapping node in order that if you want to change a little bit of the result you can, and a noise texture with details to 15 and the scale a little bit higher. Now for the last time I've used a mix color and other 2 texture coordinate and mapping node. Remember to reset it actually. And connect the vector to the B value. Now add a gradient texture and a color ramp. Connect the result of the mix color to the vector and the color of the gradient texture to the factor. So as before, we need to fix the gradient texture, and for doing that, on rotation and on the y-axis use 90. So now as you can see, you can play it with the color ramp and you can play with the factor values. You can also switch to 4D and start to change the shape. Now if you want to further customize this simple node setup, you can add an RGB curve. Now that the factor is finally created, add a mix shader and connect this glass here and other material. The color of the factor to the factor of the mix shader. And now you can actually see that the shader is started creating. If you want a better defining of the 2 material, crank this value up. It's not a problem if you lose here the kind of glass effect. I'll show you later in this video how you can recreate it without touching the nodes. Now in order to mix these 2 materials, select this factor and press Shift D. Because the first factor has the shade here, the second factor needs to be a little bit modified because the shades needs to be a little bit behind. So connect the second factor to the surface and now start to play a little bit with these values. Add another mix shader. Connect this factor with the other 2 materials. So now you can adjust it just by changing this value here. I've used also the volume of the material output. To do that, I've just copied another time this factor So after I've changed the color to white, I've used another color ramp, this time with the white here, and I've changed the RGB curve. In the case that you don't like this strong contrast between the green and the glass, go on the first factor and move away one indicator from the other. Play with the nodes until you get something like these two results here. After press Shift A, add another cylinder and press R, Y and 90. Press S on the keyboard just a little bit, and after press S and X. And like before, go on Object, Apply and Scale, and after use the bevel modifier with Shadow to Smooth. This material is really simple, it's just one node and is the glass PSTF. So now we have the glass effect also here on this other material. You can create this kind of channels for the cylinder in this way. Press Shift A and add a cube. After press something like S and 30. And now press on location Z minus 30 meters. Now select the external cylinder, press Shift D and delete the bevel because it's not necessary. Now press S and X until you reach the edge of the cube. Go on Modifier and add an array modifier. For the factor I'd like to use something like 1.1. After select the cube, add modifier and boolean, and select the cylinder. Now press here and press convert to mesh. Repeat the same sequence, this time set minus 1.1. Select another time the cube, go on boolean and select the cylinder. Now you can hide the cylinder. And you have this kind of channels. And as you can see from the main file, I've used a bevel modifier because in this way I don't have sharp edges. For the material I've used a Voronoi texture with distance to edge and the scale to 1500, and for the color ramp I've just played a little bit with the colors. The lightening of the scene is created with the light area. So the first one that I've used is actually a white and has the default settings. These ones are different because as you can see there are three different area lights. So one is green, one blue and the other one is red. And remember, if you want the kind of prisma light effect, to set the spread to 1. So that's basically how I've created this render. I've already uploaded on my channel another tutorial where I show you how you can recreate this animation. And thanks for watching this video, I hope that you found it helpful. Subscribe for more, see you all in the next one.